All right, good morning students. We are going to continue with one of the poems again of Robert Frost, and this is about fire and ice. So this poem is basically about fire and ice, and this was composed and compiled by Robert Frost. As we have learned a little about his life, he came back to America after the First World War from England, and unfortunately for the first 40 years of his life, his works were not published and he was not getting recognition for his poetic genius. However, as time went by, his works started getting published, and he was the one who actually won 4 Pulitzer prizes for his poetry in America, and all these prizes were actually given by the great president of America, Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy. All right, so if you see that he got recognition a little later, and what he believed strongly is whenever a poem is written or composed, it should be read aloud. It should be read aloud so that the meaning, and it should be read with emotion as well. The correct emotion should be conveyed while it is read aloud. The poet's emotions and the poet's whatever messages he has to convey, that should be pretty much read aloud so that everybody is able to understand and grasp the meaning that the poet wants to convey. Now, if you look into this poem, and in fact all his poems, he has used rural life at times, and mostly all his poems have a strong combination of nature. He has never excluded nature in his poems mostly. His poems are generally very short and very meaningful as well. So what he generally does is, from the elements of nature, he actually compares our life. He embeds the elements of nature into the crux of human life, and it actually translates into a very philosophical theme. So in the previous poem, as we have seen, he dwelt in snow and dust, and he kind of compared it with one of its bad days and how he got to his actual good mood or cheerful mood. In this poem also, he has used the elements of fire and ice. Okay, so we all know that fire and ice are pretty much opposite things. We all are aware that fire and ice are pretty much opposite in their characteristics. They are two extremes, they are very harsh, okay, and these are opposite characteristics as well. So fire and ice are absolutely opposite things, however very well combined in this poem to give the effect. Okay, so we have fire and ice that was written by Robert Frost. What is this? It is a symbolic poem. It is a symbolic poem. Why? Because he is using these elements of fire and ice as symbols to convey human things, okay, to convey human emotions, or rather I would say the entire structure of the world. Okay, so here we have a symbolic poem, fire and ice. It represents two opposites, and this poem was actually inspired by Dante's Inferno. Now this was basically a thesis written by Dante, and in this Dante's Inferno, he has basically compared the sinners, okay, what the sinners are going to go through. The sinners are going to go through hell, okay, they will be put in fire in hell, and they will be submerged in ice till their necks. So as we can see and as we can feel as well, even if we don't refer to Dante's Inferno, we know that fire and extreme ice are two extremes. We cannot be in ice for a long time, we cannot be in fire as well. Both are very extremes of nature, elemental nature basically, and they have serious consequences. They are very painful in their experiences. They will always leave very painful experiences whenever we encounter them. Okay, so obviously it is inspired by Dante's Inferno. Now what he is trying to compare is that we will, as we go through the poem, we will learn about it. So fire basically, according to him, symbolizes all our desires. Human beings are the most, the species is always in desire of something or the other. Our one desire gets fulfilled, the next desire just pops up in no time. Okay, we all have unlimited desires. Even in economics and commerce, we define human being to be a bundle of unlimited desires. Okay, so desires just don't end. Whether we will be having those things or not which we desire, but we keep on desiring and we keep on moving in life because of that. Okay, so according to him, fire symbolizes desire and ice symbolizes hate. So fire basically symbolizing desire and ice is symbolizing hate. Okay, so there are two ways to end the world according to him. This entire world will come to an end by two ways. Either it will be a victim of too much of desires of humans, or it will be a victim of too much of hate. Because of the unlimited wants and desires we have, okay, unlimited desires we have, we kind of will kill each other and the world will come to an end, or it will come to an end because of the tremendous amount of hatred that human species have amongst each other. Okay, so either because of our unlimited desires or because of our unlimited hatred, the world will supposedly meet its end. The world is not going to meet its end naturally, but it will be human beings and their desires and hatred which will actually make the world come to its own end. Okay, so here we have the poem, a very short and simple poem, not very much of complicated words used, and the sequence is very easy to understand, very simple language, short, and the message is brief. Okay, some say the world will end in fire. Okay, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. So the poet is basically starting with somebody else's opinion. If you look into the first two lines, the poet is not expressing his own opinion, he is expressing a general opinion of people. So some say that the world is going to end in fire. He doesn't mean it literally, he means that because of the huge amount of desires we have, the world is going to come to an end one day. Okay, so everybody is trying to fulfill his or her own desire, because of which there is always a conflict of interest amongst human beings. There will always be a conflict. Why? Because everybody is desiring to live and have all the access to all the luxuries of life in the short span that we have to live. Okay, so some say the world will end in fire, which means that the excessive desires that we have, the excessive bundle of wants and desires that we have, okay, this will be the reason for the destruction of the world. So human desires will be the destruction, will be the reason of destruction for this world. That's what people generally say. Okay, some say in ice, and some say in ice means hatred. So as and when the wars have happened and numerous genocides have happened, we all know in the history of the world, hatred has just no boundaries. When we look at different wars that have happened in the regions, the different genocides that have been committed time and again, it very much declares that human hatred is also kind of unlimited. There is just no limit to the hatred that human beings have amongst each other. Okay, so some people will say that, that this will end in the hatred that we are piling up, but if it had to perish twice, which means that if the world had to perish twice, perish means destroy, get destroyed. If the world had to get destroyed twice, okay, if the world or the earth was given a chance to get destroyed twice, I think I know enough of hate to say for destruction ice is also great. Okay, so the poet goes with, or the poet actually goes in favor of fire as the elemental cause of destruction. Elemental cause of destruction means the poet agrees to people who say that excessive desires would be or excessive human desires would be the cause of end for the world. So he goes, I hold with those who favor fire. So he agrees with the ones who agree that the world is going to come to an end because of the unlimited desires that human beings have. Okay, so he agrees with them, and he says that even if the world is destroyed and the world is given a second chance to get destroyed once again, so if it had to perish twice, so if the world was given a chance to get destroyed once again, I think I know enough of hate. So enough of hate will be there to say that for destruction ice is also great. So for destruction ice is also enough. Ice means hatred. So ice is also enough to destroy. Ice is also enough to destroy things. To say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. And would suffice. And would suffice means that it would be sufficient for the destruction. Okay. So here it means that poet agrees. It's just that he differentiates. He says that desires would be the first cause of destruction, and if it is going to get destroyed once again, then hate will be the cause of destruction. So this is the crux of the poem. we will go into the literary devices that have been used in the poem, and in the next slide we are going to discuss in detail about the literary devices and the context of the poem as well. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, we are going to continue with the explanation of the poem. Let me adjust the camera a little so that this is visible. Okay, so we are going to discuss here the literary devices that have been used in the poem, and what are the things that have been basically used in the poem. So we'll just go with the poem once again. Some say the world will end in fire, some say it is in ice, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So as we have understood from the poem, the poet has actually used the two symbolic forms of fire and ice to express his idea that the world can get destroyed both by fire and as well as by ice, which means the world can get destroyed both by human desires, which are unlimited, the world can get destroyed both by human desires, which are unlimited, and it can also get destroyed by ice, okay, which is basically hatred. Okay, so we have already understood the meaning of the poem and now we are going to talk about the literary devices that have been used by the poem. So what are basically literary devices? Literary devices are basically vowel sounds or consonants or lines that have been expressed in such a way that it adds rhythm to the poem. Okay, it adds rhythm to the poem as well as it adds glory to the poem. It actually makes it a poem. Otherwise, the rhyming scheme or what alliterations have been used, what vowel sounds have been used, what consonants have been used. Poems, as Robert Frost himself believed, that they were written to be actually read out loud. Okay, so they need to be read out loud so that their meaning can be conveyed to the audience. Okay, so here we are talking about the literary devices. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is the rhyming scheme. So what is the rhyming scheme? Which means that what are the lines and what are the lines ending in. Okay, so let's say some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Okay, so if you look at it, fire, ice, desire, see these are ending in one, right? Fire, desire, then again we have fire. Okay, so basically this can be marked as A. Okay, if I am marking this as A, and let's say ice, this is marked as B. Okay, so this is A, B, then we have A again because it sounds for fire, desire, and then we have A again. Okay, so ice and twice they sound one, so this will be B. Okay, hate, so this will be C. This is different, this has a different sound. To say for destruction, ice again will be B. Okay, then we have hate and great, so this will be C. Okay, and would suffice, it sounds as good as ice, so this will be B. Okay, let's talk about the rhyming schemes here. So here we have fire, I-R-E, A. If I say this as A, or if I take this as A, then desire, again A, then again fire, again A, wherever it is ending in fire. Okay, so this is where A will be. Ice, wherever it is ending with a similar sound, ice, B, then we have B here as well. Okay, then we have B here as well. Okay, then we have B here as well. Okay, ice, twice, ice again, and suffice. Okay, ice, twice, ice, and suffice. Again, what we have here is let's say hate. Hate is a different word. it is not matching with either fire or ice. So it is hate, so C, and then again great. So if we look at the entire context of the poem, the rhyming scheme is A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B. A, B, B, C, B, C, B. Okay, this is the rhyming scheme. Rhyming scheme means what we are ending the poem in. How are we ending the poem? So it has to match with. So this is basically playing around with words without distorting the meaning of the poem. Okay, so this is basically the poet has very skillfully used the words in order to match up with the rhyming. Okay, now if we look at the other literary devices that have been used, the other literary devices that comes here is anaphora. What do we mean by anaphora? This is repetition of a word at the start of 2 or more consecutive lines. Repetition of a word at the start of 2 or more consecutive lines. See, sounds are very important in poems. Sounds are extremely important in poems. So here we are talking about repetition of the words of 2 or more consecutive lines. So if you look at it, here we have some and some. So these words are kind of getting repeated. These words are getting repeated. Some, and again we have some. Okay. So the repetition of a word at the start of 2 or more consecutive lines. These are all things which are beautifying the poem. Okay. Which are beautifying the lines, which are adding rhythm to the poem. So it's just not the ending rhyming scheme which matters, it also the start that matters. So some and some, here it is some, and then again we have some. So these words are repeated twice. Okay. So line 1 and line 2 begin with the same, with the word some, with the same word, that is some. So line 1 and line 2 basically begin with the same word, that is some. Enjambment. Enjambment is what? Lines getting repeated without any punctuation marks. So here the lines are getting repeated without any punctuation marks. So you have a line which is actually continuing in 2 or 3 lines in the poem, that is called enjambment. For example, you look at these lines, basically lines 7, 8 and 9. So this is basically a poem that has got 7 lines. Let's look at the 7th, 8th and 9th line. To say for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So basically this is what? This is one single sentence which has been expressed in 3 lines. To say for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Okay. So this is one line which is being used in 3 lines itself for the poem, and this phenomena is called enjambment without any punctuation marks. There are no punctuation marks in between. This is just one line which has been used in 3. Right. Okay. So enjambment is done. Now we will go on to alliteration. What is alliteration? The repetitive use of consonant sounds. When consonant sounds are repeatedly used, the repetitive use of consonant sounds at the start of 2 or more consecutive words. So if there are 2 or more consecutive words, the repetitive use of consonant sounds is what is happening here in alliteration. For example, some, say, S is a consonant. So look at this. It has been used here. It has been used here. S and S has been used here. Repetitive use of consonant sounds. This is called alliteration. What is assonance? Assonance is basically repeated use of a vowel sound in one line. The vowel becomes prominent. The sound of the vowel becomes prominent. Okay. So let's say in this one, let's look at this. Will end in fire. Will end in fire. Now look at this. I, and again I. So I is coming across many times in this line. Will end in fire. So in this case, I is very prominent. The repetition of the alphabet I is pretty much prominent, and I is a vowel. So repeated use of a vowel sound in one line. This is called assonance. Okay. So this is happening here as well. If you look at this line, I hold with those who favor fire. I hold with those who favor fire. In this one, I and O both are being very prominent. See, I here, and again I here. So the repetition of the vowel I is already happening here. O is here, O is here, O is here, O is here as well. So the alphabets I and O are pretty much prominent. Okay. So I hold with those who favor fire. So I and O both are being very prominent here, and this phenomena or this literary device is known as assonance. Okay. So you can take a snapshot of the same. we will continue with more of literary explanation of the poem in the next slide. Okay, we are going to cover the remaining part of the poem with the literary devices that we had. Okay, so this is the poem on which the remaining part is the something that we are going to cover now. So what is consonance? What is consonance? Consonance is a literary device which basically wherein a consonant sound is being repeated in a sentence, but not at the start of the word. Okay, not at the start of the word. See, we have studied alliteration, right? We have to be a little particular about the differences that are there between alliteration and consonance. Alliteration basically refers to the same sounds being repeated at the start. Alliteration is when the consonant sound is at the start of the word. For example, we said that this is an alliteration. This is an alliteration at the start of the word. Consonance is when the sound is repeated at somewhere in the middle or maybe at the end of the word. Okay, so consonance is when a consonant sound is being repeated in a sentence, but not at the start of the word. It is somewhere in the middle of the word or maybe at the end of the word. Okay, it can be either middle or the end of the word. So this is called consonance. And if you look into line 4, we have here 1, 2, 3, 4. I hold with those who favor fire. So look at this, with, okay, and those. So this is a repetition. TH, the sound is getting repeated, with and the, okay, with those. So this is a the sound which is getting repeated in line 4. Okay, so this pretty much completes the poem. Okay, if you just need to summarize this poem is all basically about how Robert Frost has used the elements of water and fire, which we are all acquainted with, and somehow we have these are extremes of nature. So we don't have very favorable experiences when exposed to them. Obviously, we will have painful experiences when exposed to them. So what he is comparing is that the world will come to an end either in a way of fire or in the way of ice, which means that either it will come to an end by fire, which means which is a symbolic of all the amount of desires that we have piled up. It will come to an end with all the amount of desires that we piled up, okay, or it will face an end by the amount of the hatred that we are piling up. So fire and ice are basically symbolic of fire is symbolic of the desires that we are piling up, and hatred is symbolic, ice is symbolic of the hatred that we are piling up. So first of all, he's emphasizing that he will go with the ones who actually believe that fire, or rather too much of desire for things, is going to be the reason for the end of the world. And if the world was to be destroyed once again, then of course hatred will be the one which will be the reason for the destruction of the world. So fire and ice are symbolic of the two human things that we have, okay, of too much of desire or too much of hatred, which is very much prevalent. The amount of desires that human beings as a species has, no other species has that much of desire. Okay, if you look into it, a tiger, once its stomach is full, it is full, it will, if the deers are going by, it will not attack. Okay, it is going to attack only when it is hungry. But we are not like that. We will keep on piling up things. The more we acquire, the better it is. That's what we go by. Okay, so human beings are full of desires. We never get satisfied or contented with what we have. We are always on the lookout to acquire more and more. And in this process of acquiring more and more, we do not know when we are actually harming others or when we are making others our enemies. Okay, and similarly, hatred just has no reason. We are found, we human beings, if you look at it, animals also kind of have a type of hatred, but that hatred is very phenomenal to their existence. Okay, for example, if somebody enters the territory of an animal, then they will fight. But that's not because of hatred, because they know that if that animal is entering their territory, it means food will be shared with an extra person, or rather an extra animal. Okay, so they know that all the resources that they have available in that territory will now be shared, which means that logically they are going to get less of share. It's not about hatred. but we are piling up hatred, and our hatred just knows no bounds. Okay, hatred in terms of religion, hatred in terms of race, hatred in terms of color, hatred in terms of caste, hatred in terms of gender, you name it. Human beings have so many dimensions of hatred that it is quite inevitable, or it is quite foreseen that if at all destruction happens, hatred would be one of the primary reasons for destruction of the world. Okay, so very meaningful poem, a very short poem, wherein the elements of fire and ice have been picked up very craftfully and explained, and woven with the crux of life, of human life. So please go through the entire poem once again, look at the literary devices, and go through all the MCQs that could be asked. If you have any questions with regards to this quiz, with regards to the expression of the poem, or any clarification, please feel free to post your comments and let me know. I will definitely find the time to answer and clarify them. All right. Thank you so much for your time. You can take a snapshot of this one, and we will continue with other things.